Sometimes, to find your true strength, you must first awaken the part of yourself the world tried to bury. Sometimes, you are not just a survivor, you are a legacy reborn. Seraphina stood at the threshold of Gideon's private sanctuary, the heavy oak doors looming before her like guardians to another world. Behind her, Isla squeezed her hand gently, her presence a silent encouragement. Seraphina drew a deep breath, steeling herself against the fear gnawing at her belly. She wasn't just stepping into a room, she was stepping into the truth of who she was. Inside, the chamber pulsed with energy. Ancient tapestries lined the walls, depicting wolves crowned with silver moons, battles fought beneath blood-red skies, and thrones carved from bone and gold. The air smelled of old power, earthy, raw, undeniable. Gideon stood by a stone pedestal in the center of the room, his silver eyes fierce yet soft when they met hers. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that seemed to stir something deep inside her. Seraphina hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. "I need to know." Torin, standing at Gideon's side, lit the ceremonial brazier. Blue fire danced along the edges, casting eerie shadows that flickered across the walls. Gideon reached for a dagger, its blade ancient and engraved with runes that seemed to shimmer under the firelight. "This won't hurt you," he said, "but it will call your true blood." Seraphina bared her palm without flinching. When Gideon pressed the dagger lightly against her skin, a single bead of blood welled up and fell into the fire. The reaction was instant. The flames roared, turning silver, and a low, guttural howl filled the chamber. Seraphina staggered as pain raw, electric shot through her body. She clutched her belly, instinctively shielding her unborn twins, but Isla was at her side in an instant, whispering words of comfort. Gideon's hands hovered near her, torn between giving her space and the primal urge to protect. Seraphina dropped to her knees, gasping as images flooded her mind. Visions of wolves running through ancient forests, of battles fought in her ancestors' names, of a silver crown forged from the ashes of fallen enemies. And then, from the depths of her soul, something woke up. A howl, fierce and pure, ripped from her throat. Her wolf no longer silent, no longer broken roar to life inside her. It was not the timid, broken creature she had been told lived within her. It was powerful, majestic, a true alpha's bloodline. Seraphina's eyes flew open, glowing with a radiant gold light. Gideon dropped to one knee before her, his head bowed. Torin followed. Even Isla, sensing the shift, knelt with tears of awe streaming down her face. "You are not broken," Gideon said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You are royalty, lost and hidden, until now." Seraphina rose to her feet, power thrumming through her veins, the baby wolves within her responding with gentle flutters. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. "I am Seraphina VIII," she declared, her voice strong, carrying through the stone halls. "Daughter of the forgotten bloodline, mother of the future. And no one-not betrayal, not the cruelty of her past, not even fate itself, would ever break her again. When the past tries to chain you, you shatter those chains with the strength of who you were always meant to become." Seraphina was no longer running from her destiny. She was claiming it. Strength can awaken a sleeping heart, but it also awakens enemies who would rather see that heart destroyed. When you claim your destiny, the shadows do not bow. They strike. The new strength inside Seraphina was intoxicating, but she barely had a moment to savor it. As the echoes of her declaration faded through the stone corridors, Gideon rose slowly, his expression a storm of pride and fear. "You've awakened your birthright," he said, "but that means the ones who wanted you silenced, they felt it too." Before she could ask who, a deep rumble shook the earth beneath them. Dust rained from the ceilings. A warning. Torin cursed under his breath. "They're here." Seraphina's instincts flared hot and wild. She gathered Isla close, pushing her behind Gideon's massive frame just as a deafening crash split the doors apart. Dark-cloaked figures poured into the chamber, dozens of them, their scent twisted and sour, not natural wolves, but corrupted creatures bred in darkness. Their eyes glowed with a sickly green light. At their head was a woman, regal, cruel, her hair a silver so pale it almost shimmered transparent. Her gaze locked onto Seraphina like a predator scenting blood. Finally, the woman hissed, "The lost bitch reveals herself." Gideon snarled low and dangerous, stepping protectively in front of Seraphina, but she put a hand on his arm. "No," Seraphina said, her voice steady despite the terror thrumming in her chest. "This is my fight." The woman laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You're carrying his heirs," she said, voice dripping venom. "We can't allow that." Before Seraphina could react, the woman unleashed a blast of dark energy, aimed straight at her. Time slowed. Seraphina could feel every heartbeat, every breath. She stepped forward, instinct guiding her. The gold fire inside her blazed bright, meeting the attack head on. The dark magic splintered against her aura, the shards vanishing into harmless dust. The cloaked figures hesitated, sensing the shift in power. "You will not touch my children," Seraphina said, voice a growl. "You will not steal my life again." The room exploded into chaos. Gideon and Torin leapt into battle, Isla flanking Seraphina, her own latent wolf snarling to the surface. Seraphina moved with a grace she had never known she possessed. Every step, every strike was guided by the ancient strength within her. She was no longer the scared girl from the orphan pack. She was a queen rising. Blow after blow, she drove the enemy back, her wolf roaring alongside her. The cloaked figures faltered, confused, breaking rank. But the silver-haired woman, she did not retreat. "You can fight," the woman sneered, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. "But you cannot run from your destiny. We will come for you. For them." Seraphina stood tall, blood and power staining her skin. "Let them come," she whispered coldly. "I will be ready." As the last of the invaders fled into the night, the fires dimmed. Silence fell heavy. Seraphina turned to Gideon, to Isla, to Torin, all bruised, bloodied, but alive. "Family, the war was only beginning, and she would not break. Not this time. Never again. Some wars are fought with claws and teeth. Others are fought with the unbreakable will to protect what matters most." Seraphina was no longer just surviving. She was fighting for a future worth bleeding for. Some battles are born of blood, others off choice. And sometimes, destiny waits not in the roar of war, but in the quiet defiance of a mother standing alone beneath the moon. Seraphina stood at the edge of the ancient clearing, her heart hammering against her ribs. The full moon hung low, bathing the forest in silver light. Behind her, the twins stirred within her womb, two tiny heartbeats that gave her strength beyond anything she had ever known. Before her stood Gideon Stormvale, no longer just a reclusive billionaire, no longer only the Alpha King. He was a man laid bare by fate's brutal hand. Around them, the gathered Wolveshi's pack watched with bated breath. Whispers rustled through the trees like restless spirits. A human carrying royal heirs. A dormant wolf who dared to challenge the throne. "You summoned me," Seraphina said, her voice cutting through the heavy air. She was not the scared girl abandoned on orphanage steps anymore. She was a mother, a protector, a storm in her own right. Gideon's silver gaze burned into her. "Not to command," he said quietly, "to choose." Behind him, Torin stood grim and ready, as if prepared for battle. The elders of the pack formed a solemn circle, their faces a mask of skepticism and fear. Tradition screamed that she was unworthy, that her blood was flawed, that the unborn heirs she carried were a risk to their very legacy. "I will not surrender my children," Seraphina said, her spine straight. Her wolfer, the ghost of Itroid, silently inside her, no longer broken, only sleeping. Gideon stepped closer, the power rolling off him like a thunderstorm about to break. "I would never ask you to," he said, voice rough with emotion. "But the pack, they must see your strength, Sarah. They must feel it." Understanding dawned, cold and sharp. This wasn't a plea. It was a trial. From the crowd, an elder stepped forward, his eyes cruel. The girl must prove her blood or be cast out. Torin's fist clenched at his sides, but Gideon held him back with a look. This was Seraphina's fight. I accept, she said, surprising everyone, even herself. The challenge was brutal. The elder shifted into a massive wolf, black as midnight, fangs gleaming. Seraphina stood her ground, her body trembling, but her will unbreakable. When he lunged, she didn't move with brute strength. She moved with purpose. She ducked under the swipe of his claws, twisted and slammed her palm against his exposed ribs, forcing the air from his lungs. Every lesson life had taught her. The beatings, the hunger, the betrayals had forged her into a weapon. Again and again the elder attacked, but Seraphina danced through the strikes with a grace no wolf could anticipate. She wasn't fighting to dominate. She fought to survive, to protect. Finally, with one swift move, she trapped the elder in a chokehold and dropped him to his knees. The clearing was silent. Seraphina stepped back, chest heaving. I am not weak, she said, voice ringing like a bell. I may not shift, but my soul is wolf. My heart is alpha. Gideon moved then, swift and sure, his hand catching hers. He turned to the pack, his voice a command that brooked no argument. She is mine, he said, and these children are ours. Challenge them again, and you challenge me. One by one the wolves dropped to their knees, heads bowed in submission. Even the defiant elder lowered himself, growling his reluctant respect. Tears blurred Seraphina's vision as she realized she had won, not by birthright, not by force, but by the undeniable strength of who she had become. Later that night, in Gideon's grand home, he cradled her face in his calloused hands. You saved them, he murmured. You saved me. Seraphina smiled, exhaustion and triumph mingling in her chest. We saved each other. In the months that followed, Seraphina gave birth under a blood-red moon, a sign, the pack said, of a new era. 2 strong, healthy pups, twins who would one day rule not with cruelty, but with a fierce, unbreakable love their mother had carved from the ashes of a broken past. And as Gideon placed the firstborn in Seraphina's arms, he whispered an oath that bound them beyond blood and destiny. Together, always. The betas hidden heirs were no longer hidden. They were the beginning of a new legend, a kingdom reborn in fire and healed by love.